Greetings to everybody. Today we will be continuing our literature reading, talks on the Gita by Vinobha Bhave. Some of you, if you are starting now, he was a freedom fighter as well as a spiritual person who lived by the principles of Swadharma, that is, performing duty. And according to him, the Swadharma, he states, is it's a one's natural duty, and it is dictated by one's natural state of being, and that is one's true self and status in life. So, what does he mean? If I am a housewife, I perform my duty perfectly as a housewife. If I am a butcher, I perform my duty perfectly as a butcher. It is performing your duty from where you are. And Revered Daji all week has been giving us profound sittings, trying to communicate this deep message of how meditation is a very important aspect of our life, and only by dedicated practice day after day at the same time will humanity change. So meditation should lead us to transformation. And most of us, we suffer when we are meditating. Our suffering is because of the thoughts. The thoughts are so disturbing that you want to get up. But true surrender lies and happens when we follow the process of trying to move from the periphery to the center and remain there in the center. Then what happens naturally? Your attention towards those waves of thoughts is not there. You are moving towards the inner center, the ultimate. And when you get absorbed in that, thoughts will be there, they may be floating. But you are not there. You enter the no mind zone. So the great master says, when a wave disappears into the ocean, what remains? Nothing. There is no individuality there. So when our mind gets absorbed in that ultimate Brahman, what remains? You're absorbed. So when we sit silently and look deep into the mind disappears, absorbs into the Brahman. Thoughts may be floating, but because of this absorbency in the Brahman, the clarity, you realize they are just like clouds. They come and go. That doesn't disturb you. The depth of the ocean is not disturbed by the waves on the surface. That is what happens to us in meditation. The depth of the ocean is not disturbed by the waves on the surface. So, as you are centered in the heart and mind is absorbed, thoughts are also there, but like water falling on a lotus leaf and they just slip away and they don't touch, the lotus remains untouched. So, also, our inner state of being, when the mind is absorbed in the Brahman, becomes like the lotus untouched by the waves of the surface. And when we arrive at this state of being untouched, that is when mastery happens. Because waves are only on the surface, there is no waves in the depth. So, the whole idea of our training is we moved inward from the surface to go to the center. Surface may be disturbed, but inner self is steady. So that is why the masters say the whole science of meditation is nothing but centering, moving towards the center, getting rooted, grounded there, and abiding in it. Not only you get rooted, you abide in it. And when you arrive at that state, from there the whole perspective changes. Now the waves are there, but they don't reach you. Thoughts may be there, they don't disturb you. And from the center, you can see that they don't belong to you. They are there. So when you arrive that state, you relax, you accept. And once we reach the center and you start to enjoy whatever is happening on the surface, that is cheerful acceptance. Because now you realize it is only on the surface, it's happening, and you accept it. It's a part of you. So the whole thing is not to fight on the surface. Whatever is happening in our life circumstances, they are happening. And like Swadharma, we act. Whatever is our role. If I am a mother, I protect my children. That's my role. But you don't fight it, but slip into the center. So, centering in that consciousness is called the mastery of the mind. Centering in consciousness is called the mastery of the mind. So, today we will pursue some more thoughts from Vinobha Bhave. He's talking about the Gita's terminology. Brothers, last week we discussed Arjuna's state of despondency, Vishad, where there is Arjuna like honesty, straightforwardness, and total surrender. Even a state of despondency attains the character of yoga. So he gives the meaning yoga means union or integration. It entails detachment from suffering and perverse propensities, in fact, from all outside interests, and integration with the divine. Different types of yoga are different means or processes to achieve such integration, in other words, spiritual liberation. Even in that longing, Vishada, the sadness, the despondency, this longing for the union, the truth is there. Yoga can also be defined as the art of practicing the fundamental truths of life for this purpose. So, he says the first, it is the churning of the heart which brings this about. The churning of the heart which brings about this yoga, this despondency, this longing. The first chapter of the Gita has been called Arjuna Vishada Yoga. I prefer to call it simply Vishada Yoga. That is, in a state of despondency, a sadness, longing. So, as Arjuna provided only an occasion for the discourse. So, he gives an example of another evolved person. He says, it is not for the sake of Pundalik alone that the Lord took the form of Pandurang. So, in the Indian epics, there is a story about one young man who was so infatuated with his wife that he started to abuse his parents, neglect his parents, and finally he meets a sage and realizes, and then he becomes devoted to his parents and starts serving the parents. But once, when Lord was so impressed about him that he comes, but Pundarik says, "You please wait, I have to serve my parents first." So that's why he went down in the history. So people here, Vinobha Bhave is bringing this. So Lord came to earth for this person, devotee. So also Gita had to come to earth for the sake of Arjuna. Pundalik provided only a pretext for descent on earth. We see that the Lord is standing for thousands of years to redeem us all, ignorant creatures as we are, held captive by the bonds of this worldliness. Similarly, although Arjuna provided an immediate cause for the overflowing of the divine compassion in the form of Gita, it is really intended for all of us. So it is not just for the sake of Arjuna that the teaching is given. It is given for the entire humanity for generations to come. That is why the general term Vishad Yoga is more appropriate for the chapter. So for the first chapter, even though it is called Arjuna's despondency, Vinobha is saying this despondency is a despondency call of every soul. Beginning from this Vishad Yoga, the Gita's teachings keeps on growing like a magnificent tree, finally bearing the fruit of Prasad Yoga, that is God's great grace, the divine grace in the concluding chapter. So he's saying the beginning is the despondency, the call of the seeker for the truth, because he has no clarity. And the end is the divine grace, how the divinity protects the soul. Divine willing, we too would reach that destination during the term of our imprisonment. The Gita's teachings begins from the second chapter. At the very outset, the Lord enunciates the cardinal principles of life. The idea is that once the fundamental principles, which should be the foundation of life, are well grasped, the way ahead should be clear. So, when we grasp the fundamental principles of life, which become the foundation, and when we grasp them, life becomes clear. So, what are the fundamental principles for us? That is where our masters have given us the method to arrive, to be able to live those fundamental principles in life. First, we have to have the clarity of the mind, the centeredness of the mind, where and then the heart is purified so the heart can radiate humanness. And when mind is stable and able to think clearly, our best instrument, is able to feel clearly, see it, and the heart is able to respond, resonate its nature of love, then we are able to live life in that state of swadharma, doing our duties as fundamental principles, as the foundation for life itself. And this is what he's trying to teach us. In my view, the term Sankhya Buddhi in the second chapter stands for the basic principles of life. We have now to look at these principles but before that, it is better to have a clear understanding of the Gita's terminology. Here, what is this Sankhya Buddhi? It means the wisdom in accordance with Sankhya. Sankhya is one of the 6 systems of Indian philosophy. However, the Gita uses the term here in a different sense. The Gita has a penchant for using old philosophical terms in new sense. Grafting new meanings onto old terms is a non-violent process of bringing about revolutionary thinking. And this is what Daji does. When he explains to us that ancient words in the right meaning, when he gives us the meaning for dhyan, so many words that Daji has explained that are revolutionary. When he said, you know, I forgot the thought. Something about akarma and karma, and he was how Daji explains to us. That is a revolutionary way of making us understand the real meaning of those ancient words that were misinterpreted. Yeah, that was when duty we karma yoga. So the only karma in those days that people needed to perform was not just earning the livelihood. It was about earning liberation, arriving at that state of perfect balance. So that karma was more important than anything else. Vyasa, who wrote this book Gita, is adept in this process. This is the secret of the great potency and strength of the language of Bhagavad Gita and its ever freshness and vitality. Different thinkers could therefore read different messages in the terms used by it in the light of their experiences and according to their needs. A word is given by Master, and people understand it depending upon where they are, how they are at that moment. In my view, all those interpretations could be taken as valid from their respective standpoints. From where we are understanding it. So that is correct. And yet, we can have a different interpretation of our own without ruling out any of them. So, for this, he gives a beautiful example. There is a beautiful story in Upanishads which is worth recounting here. Once gods, demons, and human beings, gods, demons, and human beings went to the creator, who is known as Prajapati, for advice. So the creator gave all of them only one word of advice, the single word syllable, the. And the god said, "Oh, we are given to passions and sensual pleasures. We are succumbed to these sensual pleasures." So the creator is advising us, the Dhaman, that means subduing and conquer your pleasures. Because where they stand from, that is their weakness. So they understood his advice as conquer the pleasures. The demon said, "Oh, we are suffering, we are given to anger and cruelty." So Prajapati, the creator, has advised us to cultivate daya, compassion. The same word, the, they took it as compassion. Oh, he is asking us to become more compassionate. The human being said, "We are greedy and are always hankering after possessions." So Prajapati, the creator, has advised us to practice dharana, charity and sharing. So same one word that the Lord has given to each one of them, they interpreted it depending on where they are, how they stand. Prajapati, the divinity, the creator, approved all these interpretations, as all of them had arrived at their interpretation through their own experiences. We should bear in mind this story while interpreting the Gita's terminology. We understand it from where we stand, where our need is, where we need to change. Using the body of Swadharma, three cardinal principles have been enunciated in the second chapter. The first one is the Atma, the soul, the self, is deathless and indivisible. Here Lalaji differed. He said soul is divisible. That is why the subtle bodies of the masters can work on the disciples. But here we are going with the Gita. So here says the first is the self, the Atma is deathless, which is true. The body is insignificant and transient because the body dies. Nobody lives forever. Swadharma must be followed. Out of these, Swadharma is in the nature of duty to be performed, while the other two principles are to be understood. So in Gita, these three principles, one is you understand the soul lives on, the body diminishes, you, that is the understanding, but performance of karma is the Swadharma. I have already said something about Swadharma. For each of us, Swadharma is given according to Vinobha Bhave. It comes to us naturally. We do not have to go out looking for it. We did not, as it were, drop from the sky. We are a part of a stream of existence. Society, parents, neighbors, all existed before our birth. To serve the parents who gave me life, to serve the society in which I was born, is my natural duty. That is why once somebody went to Babuji and was telling that how much charity he was doing, and Babuji thought, it's like, what is there? It is your duty to serve your fellow beings. There is nothing to brag about. When a mother takes care of her children, there is nothing to brag about. It's her duty to take care of her children and her husband. Our Swadharma thus takes birth along with us. It can even be said that it is already there for us before our birth. In fact, fulfillment of Swadharma is the very purpose behind our birth. Because what did he describe it with? Fundamental principles of life. Living life with the fundamental principles as the backbone, as the character. And this our masters insisted as character formation. Some people say that Swadharma is like one's wife and say that the bond of Swadharma is an inviolable and indissoluble as the bond of marriage. Because according to the Hindu tradition, marriage is not a mere civil contract that could be annulled at will. It is a lifelong sacred bond. But I do not think that this simile is quite opposite. I would rather say that Swadharma likes one mother. So he's saying it is not like a wife. It is like a mother. You can break the bond of the wife, but we can never break the bond of the mother. I would rather say that Swadharma, like one's mother, is not chosen but predetermined. No matter what sort of a person mother is, she will ever remain my mother. This is precisely the case with Swadharma. In this world, we have nothing else to rely on. To disown one's Swadharma is to disown oneself, to commit suicide. Only in harmony with it can we move forward. So we accept. That is why we should never lose sight of it. Swadharma should in fact come easily and naturally. But because of several temptations and delusions, this does not happen or become extremely difficult. Even if it is practiced, the practice gets vitiated. The temptations and delusions that strew with thorns, the path of Swadharma has various forms. Why are they so much reiterating on the fact of this Swadharma? Because Arjuna was deviating from his path of Swadharma as a warrior, as a fighter, and he was leaving his bow and arrows and saying that why fight? And so they're trying to show it to him that you are a warrior. It's your duty to uphold the truth, destroy the evil, and retain dharma in the world. However, on analysis, we find only one thing at the bottom of it: a restricted and shallow identification of oneself with one's body. I and those related to me through the body set the limits of my expansion. So this master has explained to us many times. If you identify yourself with the body, you are bound by the body. You identify yourself with the mind, you are bound by that ties of the mind, which is ego. When you identify yourself with that absolute, you are free. That is when true transcendence happens, when we let go of the identification of ourselves with the body and the mind and move to the absolute. And here again, that is what the main principle of the Bhagavad Gita, here they state the Atman, the self is deathless, the body is insignificant and transient. Those outside the circle are aliens or enemies. Besides, the attachment is restricted to only the physical bodies of I and mine. Caught in this double trap, we start putting up all sorts of little walls. Almost everyone does this. The size of the enclosure may vary, but their enclosures are all the same, and they are not thicker than one's skins. One man's enclosure is the family, another is the nation. Here they're talking about this regular discrimination. I am a man, I am a woman, I am white, I am black, I am Hindu, I am Muslim. One wall divides the so called upper and lower classes. Another divides the people on the basis of religions. Wherever you turn, you see nothing but such walls. Even in this jail, we differentiate between ordinary convicts and political prisoners. So he's giving us the example. Life is a jail. Everybody is trapped. But we think, oh, he's a politician, he's in the jail. He's a physician, he's in the jail. You are this, you are in jail. But you are all in jail. So they're trying to show there is no difference of this external body or the clothes that you are wearing. Inside, the soul is pure. It is as if we cannot live without such walls. We revel in living in puddles. But what does this result into? Only the multiplication of the germs of mean and vicious thoughts and destruction of the healthy state of Swadharma. So when we entertain this division, he's saying you are multiplying the vicious germs, the virus that lives in us. And that vicious thoughts lead us to destruction. Awareness of the self that transcends the body. This is what we talked about when we are bound by the body. We are when we identify ourselves with the body, we are bound by the body. So we have to transcend from the body and realize. In this situation, commitment to Swadharma is not enough. Constant awareness of two other principles is necessary. When you want to transcend the body, it is not enough that you just do your duty, because sometimes people, like I said, oh, I am doing good for the society, I am doing social service. There still you are bound by the body. When you move from being bound by the body to move to the awareness of the soul level, then this Swadharma becomes pure. There is no attachment to it. This is what Lord Krishna has been teaching. That we are not attached to the karmapala, the fruit of our action. Constant awareness of the true principles is necessary. One of them is I am not this feeble and mortal physical body. The body is only the outer shell. The other is I am the self that is imperishable, indivisible, and all pervading. These two together constitute a whole philosophy of life. The Gita values this philosophy so much that it enunciates it with the very outset and only thereafter brings in the concept of the Swadharma. Some people wonder why such abstruse philosophical theorems are there at the very beginning. But to me, it seems that if there are any verses in the Gita whose place cannot at all be changed, then these are the two such verses. If this philosophy is imprinted on the mind, it will be easy to follow our duty, Swadharma. In fact, it will be difficult to follow something else. That the self is eternal and indivisible, and the body is worthless and transient is not difficult to comprehend, as it is the truth. But it needs to be reflected upon continuously in the mind. The state of being that self is everything need to reflect in the mind. It's the mind that's going outward. We should train ourselves to belittle the body and exact the self. Here we are not heartfulness, we are not belittling the body. We move the mind to the center of our being. And when our mind is absorbed in that center, that centeredness happens. The awareness of the body consciousness is lost. As you experience the soul consciousness, now you have tasted it. So you are able to gradually transcend this attachment towards the matter. So we will stop here and we will meditate now. This week being Christmas, we don't have the Thursday class, but let us all meditate now.